Hi, this is Amory Zanzal and Barb Rowlandson from Coming Out and Beyond. And today we are talking about the 5 things we wish we knew before we came out. And today we're talking about a topic that people like to avoid like the plague, but it is very important. And the topic is grief. I'm going to let Barb do some housekeeping for us first. And then we will start talking about grief afterwards.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. So first things first, if you are watching this live with us today, I would really love it if you could go over to streamyard.com/Facebook and register so that we are able to see who is making comments or asking questions. And you don't absolutely have to do that. If you make a comment during this live stream, we'll still see it, but it's super helpful to us if you do. So we'd really love it if you did that. And the next part is, I know so many of you have collected this workbook already, and good for you. And I hope you're loving it because it's huge. It's beautiful. It's got tons of great articles in it by Anne-Marie, and also some really amazing worksheets that will help you sort of hone in your thoughts and your feelings around coming out. And that's a free workbook as well. So go get it. Just follow that link. And by the way, I will drop these links in the comments after the live so that you can just click on them. And then next up, can't stay for the whole thing? No problem. You can catch all of the replays for all of this week's videos on Amory's YouTube channel, which is right there. Easy to find. The next one is, if you are watching through these workshop videos and you realize, you know what, I would really love a little more robust help, a little further help, a little more work with Anne-Marie, then why don't you start by scheduling a call with her? It's half an hour. It's free. You get to share your story, talk about what challenges you're dealing with right now, and then Anne-Marie can help direct you to the best programs and resources for you. As we like to say in these videos, we are on the TikTok. Because we're cool. We're happening. Yeah.
We like to tell ourselves that.
Yes, we do. If you have to say that out loud yourself, you probably not, but that's okay.
That's it.
So please, if you are a TikTok addict, as I am, you can feel free to. Anne-Marie's like, no, it's not my thing.
Do it. Yeah.
Well, she's still there and her content's fabulous. So you should go and check that out. And of course, if you would like to see some of my content as well, which oftentimes is linked to what things that Anne-Marie is doing, you can follow me. And I'm at the other Helen Wheels because somebody else took Helen Wheels and I was really bummed about it. So I wasn't going to let it go. I just put the
I don't understand the Helen Wheels. Can you?
It's kind of like a roller derby name. Helen Wheels.
Got it. Okay.
There you go.
I was wondering why you were the other Helen. I thought maybe you changed your name or something.
It's incognito. So today, grief. You could probably talk about this for endlessly.
Yes. Okay. So whether you are grieving your coming out journey or grieving your marriage, grieving so many other things and the changes that we go through when we come out later in life, grief is grief. Mm-hmm. And so I want to share a little bit of my journey. So when I was in the process of coming out, it was probably about 6 months into past my fetal position phase when I was making the decision actually to come out and to eventually I ended up leaving my marriage. I was emotionally all over the place. I was crying. I was laughing. I was very, very sad. I was forgetting things. I was unable to sleep. I had no appetite. I had literally lost about 25 pounds when I was coming out. I was missing appointments. I was so unlike myself that I was like really, really scared. Well, I'm a grief counselor. believe it or not. I'm certified by the Miss Foundation, which does a lot of wonderful work with parents who have lost children. In fact, they were just featured on some news station I saw. I think it was at NPR, about the wonderful work they do on their care farm. So if you've lost a child, look up the Miss Foundation. It is amazing. So I got certified for them as a grief counselor, and it was literally 6 months into my own coming out that I was like, oh, I'm grieving.
That's quite the confluence of things right there.
Like all of a sudden, and it hit me that I was grieving. Now, the funny thing is I had grieved before, but they were different griefs.
Mhm.
They were actually, the funny thing is my mother died, and then I did a very intense residency program as a chaplain, and I spent like 8 months crying, and and I remember like, what the heck is wrong with me? Why am I crying all the time? And I remember my CPE supervisor saying to me, "Oh my God, your mother died in February," and this was like the following January. And she said, "Oh, you're grieving." She was probably wondering why the hell I was
Right, right. Like,
crying.
oh, that's why.
And also too, you grieve, I had a challenging relationship with my mom, and sometimes you grieve the relationships with parents that were not great. It's a lot harder than when your parent was really super great and stuff like that, because you grieve what was and also what wasn't.
Right.
So that's my little foray into grief in this journey. It is something that is ongoing and present for me, not as bad as it used to be.
Mhm.
But I want to share some information about grief today, because I think you'll find it really helpful. And Barb, what was your experience like?
Well, I mean, I hear a lot of my own experiences in your story.
Hmm.
I had that fetal position period too, that period of crying a lot. I can remember sort of isolating myself quite a bit, not really wanting to interact with the rest of the world. And my coming out, I mean, I've experienced all kinds of grief in my life, but my coming out grief surrounding that and my circumstances surrounding that was I had a catalyst,
Hmm.
and you know, I, she made me realize that I couldn't stay in my marriage. I left my marriage. I walked away from my family home with the vow to my children that I would have a place for us all to live in 6 to 12 months. So one of the hardest things I've ever done. Lost everything, and at the time too, I was having a very difficult illness, stress-related illness to my job. So I kind of had lost everything. I had lost my job. I had lost daily contact with my children. I had lost the house that I had lived in for over a decade. Um, because of the nature of my relationship with my catalyst, I had lost contact with a lot of friends. I was very isolated. And then I lost my catalyst relationship. So I had lost so much. I was down to nothing. I had like, oh no. Okay, so Anne Marie's gone somewhere, but I'm sure she'll be back. So I'm just going to keep on going with this story. Um, yeah, so I know in terms of war, they will say this that they burn the town to the ground, and that's what I did. Hi, welcome back.
My computer died.
Oh, that's okay. No, you're back. That's good. That's okay. I'm just telling them my sad story. But yeah, I was just saying, I had kind of burned my life to the ground and had to start over again. So there was a ton of loss. But before I could accept all of the loss, I had to process it. And that was the grief process. And so I caved. Um, I was just at home in the fetal position, really sad. And then gradually, incrementally, I started to be able to do more and improve my life and gain back and rebuild. I won't say gain back, because I didn't get back the things that I had walked away from. I didn't want those things, and I had already decided before that. So what I was doing was rebuilding a whole life when you're 45,
Mhm.
after you've been married for 21 years and have 2 children. That's that's not a light and easy task.
No, it is not.
Nope.
No, it is not. So let's do some grief 101. So a lot of times people say that they think that grief is a process that you go step by step by step by step by step, and then you're done. And it's not like that. Grief is the first person that really started talking about grief in a cohesive way was someone who's very famous, and her name was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She did a lot of studies on people who were actually dying, and she talked about the grief phase of people who were dying. Now, what ended up happening is they took her work and they just placed it on people who were grieving. And her work can be appropriate for that, but grief is basically, you'll see in the workbook, grief is like, a jumbled mass of string tied together. Grief is like that. So what I have come, and this is just my observations, is that the 5 stages that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross identified was, first there's shock, then there is depression, there's shock, bargaining, anger, depression, and then acceptance. She put them in those order, but it also is totally jumbled up. And some days you'll be in an acceptance place, some days you'll be in an anger place, some day you'll be in a bargaining place. But what I have come to realize is that I have found that her theory about grief really fits the later in life community really super well, because we are dying. Really, we're dying to a sense of self. And I don't want to be morbid, and I don't want to scare people. And when I say die, people go, oh, but what I mean is that we are leaving parts of ourselves, not all of us, but parts of ourselves behind to be able to create a new life. And so, if you're a Buddhist or you believe in Buddhist principles, we talk about, birth, life, death, rebirth, and life really truly is a continuous process of that. And if you really think about your life and reflect about it, a lot of times you will see there's these patterns of birth, birth, life, death, rebirth. And so I have found when you start reading the pages of the later in life community and finding comments on Facebook and stuff like that, you will see people by first of all, one being totally shocked that they're maybe have fallen in love with a woman. Our later in life community goes from people that were sort of out when they were younger, who had girlfriends when they were younger, people like me who sort of thought I was gay, but really never experimented until I got older. People like Barb who had a catalyst, never thought they were gay, and then, met somebody and was like, oh, holy poop. The community is all over the place about discovering their LGBTQ-ness. So there's all different paths that people discover that. So there's that shock phase. I often see people bargaining. And I am going to say that I really experience people bargaining about trying to stay married and figuring out how to do that. Having said that, some people are able to bargain and they are able to figure out how to stay married and to embrace their queerness. But what I have experienced that 95% of the time, it is only a stopping place on the journey to come out. A lot of times people are just trying to figure out how to keep everything together. A lot of times there is a lot of anger. There is anger for if you are somebody who comes from a religious tradition, there's a lot of anger around why did God do this to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is my community abandoning me? Even though you know why, all those things, there's a lot of anger around that. There's a lot of anger around the way people treat us. There is a lot of anger, sometimes at our ex-spouse, sometimes at our children, sometimes at our parents, sometimes at our family and our friends. Sometimes a lot of anger at ourselves because, like, how did I not knew that? How did I not know this? How did I like get married? And so there's a lot of anger to deal with.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, there's a lot of depression too. I mean, and sadness because there's a lot of change and growth and transformation going on. And so, if you study anything about like when people transform, that is, I can't remember the technical term, but we call it the messy middle. And so it
Mhm.
is very normal to be in the messy middle for a while as you try to find things out. And then finally, there's also acceptance. And you know, and there'll be times where you really will accept the fact, okay, I'm not straight. This is what it is. And then you'll be dating a woman for a year, and then all of a sudden you think, maybe I'm straight. So, and then you're going back through again. So it's like it's okay. All of those feelings are super normal.
Mhm. Oh yeah, for sure. It's something we were just talking about before this workshop video started was feeling, and I'm just thinking back to feeling angry. A lot of times when we're just coming out might be the thing that causes us to think, okay, I have to leave my marriage. But these were probably, in a lot of cases, not great marriages to begin with, and
Absolutely.
lots of other things that were wrong. But the breakdown of the marriage gets attributed to the coming out when really there was a whole lot of other stuff that was going on as well. So it can be really frustrating to feel like you are bearing the guilt, bearing the responsibility, bearing the shame of, having your marriage end, when in reality there were probably a lot of other contributors, and it's just a really layered situation.
Yeah. So one of the things that okay, so in that year when I was grieving my mom, I had a fellow person who was going through the PAP program with me, and she kept saying to me, "You need to feel it. You just need to feel it." And I
Yeah.
like looked at her like she had four eyes because I honestly didn't know what she was talking about. She goes, "You have to go through these feelings," and I'm like, "What are you talking?" But this is the thing: is that grief, feelings of grief are really intense. It is our physical, spiritual, intellectual, and emotional response to loss. Grief is something that we cannot control.
Hmm.
Just comes over us. It is a feeling. It's a
Hmm.
bunch of feelings. It is a feeling. It comes over us. It is part of the human experience. Everybody grieves.
Yeah.
And we have big griefs, like when somebody major in your life dies, and or if you've had miscarriages, if you've lost a job, if you've moved from a new city. I mean, there are all kinds of griefs in our. There's the big ones, and then there's the little ones. So we go through this process again and again. If you were in a family where you were taught that you're not allowed to feeling any feelings,
Hmm.
it's really hard to grieve. So what I realized, what I had done for most of my life was put my grief in my little box on my shelf. And so it really wasn't until I came out that the full weight of everything that I had never really grieved came out. Because this is what I know about grief is that, for example, when you like somebody dies or like that you're not very close to or something happens or there's a national tragedy and you have the most intense feelings of grief and you're like, why am I so sad about this? I don't understand why. It's just all your old griefs.
Yes.
The grief is always like looking for a way to
Hmm.
come out, you know
Hmm.
and to have you feel those feelings. So
Absolutely.
what are some of the feelings of grief, Barb?
Oh gosh. Something that's really common, I know that I've experienced this, a lot of other women experience this, is that even though that you have chosen to make a change, there are things about your old life that you grieve. And then it's like, why am I grieving my old life? Why am I grieving these things? I chose to leave it. And it's like, how dare I do this? But that is normal to grieve what you've lost. Most of us didn't enter into marriage, back in the beginning with the intention that one day it would end. You had sincere hope and desire for a future with your husband. And you built things together. And so when things don't play out the way that you had planned for it to for decades, maybe, that is a source of grief. And another source of grief, too, is not only that, but when we come out and we realize what an amazing awakening it is to accept our sexuality, we can grieve what we didn't have.
Absolutely.
Why didn't I do this sooner?
Right. There's a line in I wrote an article for Grief Matters. It's a great website, and what I talked about was the unexpected grief experience of coming out later in life. I literally did not expect to grieve the way I did. Like, it didn't even occur to me. And there is a line in the article in which I said, I was grieving the life I wish I had and the life I thought I was going to have. So,
Right.
for example, just like Barb said, I do grieve the fact that I wasn't with the correct gender for my sexual orientation years ago, because I think my life would have been a lot more easier and a lot less restlessness in it. I probably wouldn't be as educated as I am because I kept searching for something. I got to figure out what's going on here. Because I find our later in life community tends to be pretty well educated and and if it's not traditional education, they've done a lot of really cool things.
For sure.
So it really was like, there is the grieving of not being a young, hot lesbian and,
So awesome.
fool around. Oh, and also fool around without worrying about getting pregnant, So things like that. So, and I want to share something with you. Can you see it, Barb?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to share this growing around grief. This is, I didn't print this ahead of time, so I'm just sharing it from the webpage. But this is the thing, is that people think we grieve and that it tends to shrink over time. So we stay the same and the grief shrinks. But in actuality, what ends up happening is that when we have grief, that grief stays the same, but we actually grow around it and we grow bigger. And because of the experiences of grief, we end up really changing us. I find that grief has been one of my most learning experiences of all times. So I know it's hard in the beginning. I believe me, I honor all of you who are going through this right now. Barb and I really understand that. And we're here for you in this. So let's talk about some of the things that happen when we grieve. So we talked about allowing ourselves to feel the grief, pushing away the feelings only make things worse. What about our old lives, Barb?
You can grieve your old life, and that's totally normal. And we can be very hard on ourselves, I think, too. When we are going through this, we feel like we've caused pain, that we've given something valuable up in search of something. Maybe we don't know what's really ahead of us. Nobody has a magic ball to say how this coming out is going to go. I think we are so hard on ourselves that a really good point to remember is and we've all known this statement, we are all just doing the best we can with the information we have at the time. And I think a lot of us, especially those of us who are nurturing people, so many of us are, we are kinder to friends and family who make big life changes than we are to ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So maybe that's a good thing to underscore, is like, show yourself kindness.
Mm-hmm.
You
And I
will.
also, and I also want to, Barb started to talk about this, but this is the thing. It's normal to feel nostalgia or longing for your old life. That is really, really normal. And a lot of times I hear people feeling really panicked because they love their girlfriend. They've
Mhm.
moved out, they're happy with her, and then all of a sudden they start grieving their old life. They're grieving, the heteronormative life that most of us have had.
Mhm.
And what I have come to realize that this coming out journey is this experience of holding two things that can be true at once.
Yes.
You can be grieving your old life. You can miss your husband. You can miss the way things can be.
Mhm.
You can be really excited that you're finally out. You can be in love, totally in love with your girlfriend.
Mhm.
And so it is okay to hold two things at once, and it is also okay to grieve things. Now, we talked about this the other day. I would not talk to your new girlfriend or partner about how
Mhm.
much you're missing your whole life
No, no.
because it's too hard for them to hear, and people are human. And so, they're going to worry if you're going to go back. It can cause a lot of tension and a lot of
Yes.
drama.
Yeah.
So find other people, other communities that you can talk about, what you are missing and the pain and the sadness that you may be feeling.
Mhm.
Because sometimes our new person and also too, if you're both coming out of marriages, I even recommend to do that as well, to find your own people. Even if you both understand it, spending too much time on focusing on what was can be really difficult for a new relationship, but also too, two women coming out from marriages will not be grieving it the exact same way. So
No.
your partner may be way ahead of you or way behind you, and you're like, "What's wrong with her? Why is she getting on so well and I'm still stuck here? Or why
Right.
is she so far behind me?" I mean, like, I'm so glad I'm out of that marriage.
Mhm.
People grief is grief, and people do it all differently. So
Yes.
the way I grieved the loss of everything that I lost, and the way Barb grieved everything that she lost, it's just different, and that's okay. So that's
Mhm.
why it's really super important to find places that you can be in, and you can do that work, or community or friends that you can talk to about that.
Mhm. Just because you're grieving things about your old life too doesn't mean that you don't love
You're
what
new.
you're developing.
Yeah.
Maybe, we talked the other day about the growth zone.
Hmm.
And even though there were things that you maybe were unhappy with in your marriage, there were probably aspects of it that were really comfortable. And now that you're coming out, you're in a more uncomfortable phase.
Right.
Phase,
Absolutely.
and you probably miss the safety zone a little bit. It doesn't mean what you're going towards isn't worth going towards.
Right.
So remind yourself of why you're doing it.
Hmm. And I just want to reiterate as we end up here today is that be gentle with yourself.
Yes.
You know, find people to talk with. Ritual is really, really nice. If there is some ritual you can perform, so for example, lighting a candle or taking a walk and throwing rocks into the stream with all your losses,
Hmm.
or if you are an artist or painting, the grief and the you're feeling, or you're a writer or
Hmm.
you're a poet, writing all these experiences down, all those, and I'm sure you all have some things you've done yourself. I think, it is grief is I'm going to be really honest with you. It's been 6 years since I've come out, and I am probably in the place now where I'm okay. It probably happened about a year and a half ago. But I'm going to say that it was a pretty long process, but I also started to recognize when I was grieving. So
Hmm.
I also knew that it was temporary. that it wasn't going to last forever. In the beginning, it does feel like it's going to last forever, but it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah. And so I knew it. So like when it hit me now, or even, and it still hits me now occasionally, like really occasionally, I don't know, something will trigger it. I know that it's temporary. I know that it's not who I am. It doesn't define me. I just have to go with the flow of it. And eventually it does pass. You know, a feeling is just a feeling, and they all eventually pass.
Mm-hmm. Talking about it, sharing with your community, sharing with other people who are like-minded, listening to other people's stories that reflect your own, that is an immense comfort as well.
And that's what Barb and I offer in Lotus Group Coaching. We would love to have you join us. If you would like some more information about it, it is on that last page of that amazing workbook. I did all the writing. Barb did all the design. Yeah, she's very good at that. So it is an amazing workout book. If you're not ready to do group coaching or any type of coaching, the workbook will go a long way in helping you on your journey. Reach out to us if you have any questions or want to learn more. It has been such a pleasure being with you all this week. And tomorrow we get to talk about joy. Because we don't do that a lot in our groups. We talk about all the hard stuff, but we want to talk about the happy stuff because, man, I'm so much happier now than I was.
So many things, so much better.
So much better. So let's talk about joy. So we'll see you tomorrow, Friday, 1 p.m. Central Time, same bat time, same bat channel. Bye.
See you tomorrow.